Thanks. October has come and gone. Fall reading has sort of come and gone. It's still here, but I don't know where you live, but where I live, it's already started snowing and I am not here for that. And while I do miss spooky season, I'm so happy I had a great reading month. So many 5-star reads, and I'm so excited to share them with you. So let's go over some of my October favorites and some of my not so favorites. I started off October by finishing Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. This is part of the Shepherd's King duology. I really enjoyed the first book. I did not think I would enjoy the second book as much as I did the first book. I've said this already on TikTok, but I have never been so stressed for a group of characters in my life. This is a gothic, eerie, dark fantasy with romantic tension. I won't say too much about what's going on in this story in case you haven't read the first book yet. But there is rising political tension, there's court intrigue, there's themes of sacrifice, identity, and confronting generational harm. There are very high stakes involved as the group of characters start to unravel what the truth really is about their kingdom and what they were told about its history and how the curse started. We get more into the lore of some of the characters and the morally gray character in this story. I loved the ending that they received, but I'm also really sad about the ending. Like, it's a good ending, but I'm also really sad. I will say, and I have said this before, there is a lack of diversity in the cast of characters in this book and in the author's other works. And that is the only reason why I keep docking it by a 0.5 rating. But I still give this series a 4.5 rating because the story is just really good. This next book, I'll say that I'm somewhat late to the game, but Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This is a YA fantasy with political tension in a dystopian royalty setting. I've had this book for years and I did start it at some point, but I unintentionally DNF'd it. And I finally had it in me to give it another try. I did listen to it via audiobook this time. And I also listened to the sequel, which is Glass Sword. Yes, Glass Sword. For those of you who haven't read it yet, this is set in a world that's divided by blood. Those with silver blood are considered the elite and they have powers. And those with red blood are considered ordinary people and they are the oppressed group of people. Mare Barrow is the main character in the story and she is a red, but she discovers that she has powers that a silver would have. And because her existence technically shouldn't be possible, the royal family, who are all silvers, force her into court life. They give her a fake identity and masking her as like a long lost silver noble. Mare then becomes entangled in political schemes and secrets and eventually a rebellion. There is a crazy betrayal that happens that launches the story forward, and I really enjoyed it for that scene specifically. There is kind of a love triangle. I usually love YA, but I don't know. I just couldn't get into the story the way I hoped I would. I know there is a crazy fan base for the series, and I can see why. The writing is great. The characters are great. Personally, I just couldn't get into it, and I think that's okay. I rated Red Queen 4 stars and the sequel Glass Sword 3 stars, and I think there are 5+ books to the series, but I don't think I'll be continuing. Sorry. Next, we have Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. I have never read anything rooted in Mexican folklore before, so this was such an intriguing read. It's a historical gothic western, and it blends Mexican folklore with elements of horror. And there's also a delicious slow burn second chance romance in here, and it's full of yearning. The story is set in 1840s northern Mexico during escalating conflicts with American colonizers. It's a dual POV between two childhood friends, Nina and Nestor. They get separated after a traumatic event and they don't see each other for years later when they're both adults. Nina is training to be a healer around the same time a mysterious sickness starts taking over some of the people on her family's ranch. As Nina's people begin struggling against colonial forces, rumors also start circulating about monsters being seen attacking people. Initially, these rumors are ignored until it could be ignored no longer when Nina's own people are attacked. I won't give any more of the story away, but I really do love the eerie atmosphere of the story. I also love the use of the monsters being vampire-like creatures. The vampires in this story are rooted in Mexican folklore, so if you're not familiar with that already, then it is a really fresh take on what a vampire is. And I really love how they're portrayed in this story, especially towards the end. And if you've read this, you know what I mean, but that's all I'm gonna say. The romantic element in this is so sweet, and I love that it didn't interfere with the plot of the story. So definitely give this one a read. I rated it 5 stars. Okay, I'm a little nervous about this next one because it is my first real DNF of the year. And I don't know why I'm smiling as I say this because I'm actually really sad about it. Lore of the Wilds by Analeigh Sbrana. I have seen this floating around my socials for a while. I love the cover. I think the cover is so beautiful. The characters look so beautiful, and I've heard great things about this story, which is why I picked it up. It's described as a cozy cottagecore type fantasy. The story follows a human girl named Lore. She works in her family's apothecary, and then one day an earthquake hits her village and essentially destroys her home. She ends up being forced to partner with the Fae, who live in the place called the Wilds, which is kind of like an enchanted forest. The Fae need her help because she can read their language, texts in their language, and they have this enchanted library that has a curse or some sort of enchantment placed on it where the Fae cannot enter it, but humans can. So essentially they hire her forcefully to help them sort through their texts. They're looking for something, I can't remember right now, but they need her to look through all their texts in that library and find something for them. I don't remember at this point. But that's where I stopped. That's where I stopped reading. The storyline isn't that bad. Like, I can see it being something I'd love to read normally, but unfortunately, I just could not get through the writing. I don't know. I don't have the words. I don't know how to explain what's wrong with the writing. I feel like if you have read, how do I word this? If you have read this, the only way I can kind of explain it is it very much gives debut novel. And that's not a bad thing. Everyone has to start from somewhere, of course. I have never written a book, so I would never judge a writer or an author on their first pieces of work. The only thing I can say about why I didn't like the writing is it felt very forced. Like, it didn't feel authentic. Something about the writing was trying to replicate common styles of writing from other fantasy stories. It didn't feel natural in the setting. Some of the prose, it could have been written in such a simple way, but it just ended up being very clunky because it was trying to replicate another style of writing. I hope there's someone out there who understands what I'm trying to say. If you've read this book, please let me know if you kind of get what I'm getting at. Anyway, I'm going to say this is a soft DNF. I may pick it up again. Maybe it does get better. Maybe I'll enjoy the story. But for now, I'm leaving it as is. Guys, these next two books, first of all, I am very upset. To anyone who's ever recommended me books, I am very upset. I'm very upset. Maybe it's my own fault. It is my own fault for not curating things better, but An Ember in the Ashes. An Ember in the Ashes, the series. I have read both book 1 and book 2. What a ride, guys. What a ride. This is a 4-book series. I do have all 4. Coincidentally, I purchased the box set on a whim because it was on sale and I was like, oh my God, I kind of heard about this story, but I know nothing about it. I just bought it. and I'm so glad I did. This had me sad. This had me stressed. This had me crying. This had everything. This is an epic fantasy. I think it's YA. I'm not sure. We'll go with YA for now, but don't quote me on that. But regardless, it is an epic fantasy, and it's set in a brutal empire inspired by ancient Rome. There are themes of oppression, of moral conflict, found family, rebellion. It has everything I want in a fantasy. It's very fast-paced. I'd say the story is really dense, but it's so good, guys. It's so good. The oppressed group of people in the story are called scholars, and the story follows a scholar girl named Laia. Laia becomes a spy within the Empire's elite military academy to help save her brother who was imprisoned by them. She works as a servant for the head of the academy, who is a very scary lady. And while working as a servant, she meets Elias. Elias is a top soldier in the academy who is actually trying to escape. They end up teaming up to essentially rebel against the Empire, and so much happens. There is a pretty large cast of characters, but they're all so crucial to the story. And as you work your way through the next couple of books, there are more POVs added. I don't want to say more than that, but it's just such a good story. The villain character in this story, at least one of them, one of the main villains, okay, she freaks me out so much. She's someone you hate. Like, you hate her as a character, but you love her as a villain. Like, she's the perfect villain that you love to hate. Does that make sense? If you read it, it will. I am currently on book 3 of this series, which is called A Reaper at the Gate. I rated the first book, An Ember in the Ashes, 5 stars. And I rated book 2, A Torch Against the Night, also 5 stars. Next, if you are a fan of vampires, of Dracula, of Dracula's brides, or one or any of those, this is the book for you. This is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson, and this was one of my favorite reads for October. I will say some of the themes in this book may not be for everybody, and I do recommend that you look up the trigger warnings. This is gothic fiction written from the point of view of, I guess you can call her one of Dracula's brides, but they do not explicitly state that it is Dracula that they're talking about. It's told through a series of letters by Constanta. Constanta was a peasant girl who the Dracula character found as she was dying after her village was attacked. He ends up turning her into a vampire, and she becomes his immortal bride. Constanta recounts the centuries she spent with Dracula as his bride, and you can kind of see how her view of him shifts as she learns more about him and his character. And I think this speaks to so many real life relationships too, if you know what I'm talking about. With the love bombing initially, he was passionate, he was tender and caring, attentive at first. But over the years, that initial passion turns into manipulation and abuse. He's controlling, he's jealous, and it just goes downhill from there. As the centuries go by, he does bring new lovers into the relationship who then also go through the same shift in relationship that she did. And as you go through her letters, you see her slowly start to reclaim some of her identity, and she self-reflects and basically goes through an awakening. The ending is great. I really liked it. And the story itself is focused more on the characters and the character development that happens rather than the plot, which I think was just such a nice change of pace. There's sapphic and queer relationships. There are themes of toxic love and autonomy and liberation and found family. And I just really loved how it all tied together at the end. I know this book had mixed reviews, but I personally rated it 5 stars and I really enjoyed it. This was a really vampire heavy October for me. So naturally, after I finished that last one, I did pick up Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. I don't know where I put the dust jacket, but this is a sapphic gothic fantasy by V.E. Schwab. I have never read any of her work before, but that will be changing because I am really enjoying this so far. The story follows 3 different women across multiple centuries as they turn into vampires. Do I need to say more? There are time skips and it kind of goes back and forth between POVs and timelines. But it's not hard to follow at all. And knowing that vampires are immortal, I'm wondering if their paths do cross or if there's some sort of twist here where they end up overlapping each other's stories. So far, I'm really liking the characters and their individual journeys. I was hoping to have this done by now, but unfortunately, I am in such a bad reading slump, which I'm trying to push through. So we'll get there when we get there. If you've read any of these books, please let me know your thoughts and whether you agree or disagree with any of my ratings or reviews. And please also like and subscribe if you haven't already, or if you've added any of these to your TBR. Thanks for watching, and I hope you're reading something you love. Talk to you soon.